can become forward, and she speaks truth. So she's the voice that we need in the planet that stands up for things. Actually, I feel like it's a dark feminine that's ultimately, as an archetype, needs to rise up in us in relation to climate change or the interconnection of all the kingdoms of life. Like, I feel she's that voice that rises up and speaks.
Welcome to the Seeing in the Dark podcast, the podcast for new ways of leading and doing business. No more separation between money, power, and leadership, and being a deeply spiritual human being. Seeing in the Dark is about walking paths that have not been walked before and truly making a change in a world in which old ways are crumbling. My name is Nicole Nima Costeres, CEO of a multiple six-figure soul-based business, and here to take you into the mysteries of purpose, power, intuition, and soul-based leadership. May you embody your own unique essence so deeply that your vibration naturally teaches, inspires, and assists others. Let's dive in. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode, The Dark Feminine. Who is she? Today we're diving into a conversation with Winter Jade Icely. And I met Winter around 5 years ago as a participant in her Magdalena retreat, which is the work that she carries out into different places in the world. And in this retreat, she goes into the deep feminine mysteries. I got to know Winter as a deep woman who has an incredible love and devotion for ritual, ceremony, and the mysteries of life. Winter is someone that stands for a life of enchantment, and I experienced her as a witch. Like, she could totally be a teacher on Hogwarts, because Miss Winter is someone that breathes and lives and stands for temples in this world, and to bring back that ancient wisdom and ancient knowledge in these modern times through temple work. Now, Winter is mostly a facilitator internationally in the realms of mystical arts, sexuality, and dark embodiment. And she's someone that stands for work beyond gender, is one of her passions as well. So get ready for this conversation of Winter and I. And we also have this conversation around the dark feminine today because we are together offering a one-day temple in Amsterdam, the 23rd of July. A Day with the Dark Feminine is the name of this event, and we, Winter and I, together with 111 women, open a day of ritual, ceremony, and deep exploration with this archetype within ourselves, each other, and in the collective. So if you want to find out more about A Day with the Dark Feminine, you'll find all the information linked below. Let's dive into the conversation. Hi everyone, welcome. I am sitting here with a dear friend and sister in the work, Winter Jade Icely. And today we're going to dive into the archetype of the dark feminine. I'm super excited to dive in because Winter and I will offer on the 23rd of July in Amsterdam a one-day dark feminine temple day. And in this day with the dark feminine, you will have an opportunity to dive deep into this archetype and explore the energies within yourself. So welcome, Winter. I'm super happy that you are here. Excited to talk about this archetype also. But first of all, just wanted to say to the audience also that we met we were just talking about when did we meet? But it was in your Magdalena retreat about 4 or 5 years ago. And I completely fell in love with the vibe that you have and the work that you bring, just the love and the devotion that you have for this work, and the personal care, but simultaneously that deep, interpersonal or transpersonal connection that you carry out with the work is really, really beautiful. So, welcome.
Yeah, I'm excited for this event. It takes place in a church. So I'm excited to bring these energies into a temple of the church.
Yes.
It's a beautiful event.
Yes. Beautiful. So If someone is listening and they're like, the dark feminine, what is that? Like, let's start all the way at the beginning of this archetype. What is the dark feminine, or who is the dark feminine?
Yeah, well, in a way, the dark feminine, you named it, as an archetypal energy. And the archetypal energy expresses, it's a certain quality of expression of the feminine. So what it's not is, it's not a woman, it's not connected to a female of the gender, it's a principle of energy. And what it expresses is the qualities of the feminine that are steeped in our primal embodiment, our incarnate self. So she, and I'll use the word she, expresses our deep connection to earth, to our bodies, to our sexuality, to our ancient shamanic wisdom. She's almost like a voice of the earth itself. So the dark feminine is the place in us, in all bodies, that's untamed life. So the way I also see light and dark in the archetypes, like light, feminine, dark feminine, is that the dark inhabit the lower centers of our chakra system, and the light the upper. So the light is the subtle qualities of those energies, and the dark is more of the embodied qualities.
Yes.
Yeah, and people have called her the wild woman, Hecate the witch, you know, the sorceress, the temptress, the seductress. So there's lots of coined terms, but she's a force of life, actually, and most people would recognize it, you know, in childbirth, in lovemaking, in being out in nature, you know, feeling the erotic connection to the earth. Like most of us would have had moments of experiencing that life force that is connected to that archetype.
Beautiful. So when you say like the dark, you connect it to the lower chakras, and the light more to the upper chakras, I think I want to go a little bit deeper into that, because when the ones that are new with this work, there can be confusion around dark and light, right? Dark is very often seen as something that is evil or something that is shadowy. But the work in how you and me both teach it, we don't mean evil with the dark, but dark is about the lower chakra work. It's also about matter. It's about form. It's about the body. It's about the density, in a way, of this human experience. And the light being more the multidimensional, more the subtle realms, more the upper chakras. So with the light feminine, for example, we can think about Mother Mary, or we can think about more like a gentle quality, or like softness, or do you want to share a bit more about this dark and light distinguishment that we are making?
I had this experience in the spa the other day where I was sitting in the spa, and there was like an incredible wind on the upper half of my body, and my lower half was immersed in like rich, warm waters. And I had a transmission in the spa of those centers of, actually my body was encased in this like liquid matter, warm, bubbling matter, and the top half of me was kind of open and with the etheric nature of the wind. So in a way, you can experience it's just taking a breath into the body. And then when you go down into the centers, as you go down past the womb and into towards the base, you feel the density. Like you can actually have that experience of what it is to be incarnate. And as the breath travels up, you can get like particularly past the heart, you can almost feel the expansion into sort of that, you know, cosmic consciousness realm. So in a way, the breath is a vehicle between light and dark. But yeah, it's really expression of quality of energy. And the light is definitely more refined, more angelic. You know, it could also be Kuan Yin. There's something etheric in the light feminine. And in the dark feminine, we're going all the way down to the root. So she's very anchored, and it's very embodied. And ultimately, they're both two expressions of one of the feminine. So we have all expressions inside of us. But yeah, the dark feminine has definitely been my doorway into this work.
Yes. Beautiful. So, and what about masculine and feminine? Because like we are now talking, like when we talk about the work with the cross, we talk about 4 archetypes, right? That we can explore within ourselves. And you can almost imagine it, for the listeners who cannot see us, you can almost imagine it as a big pie. Let's say there is a big round pie, and the bottom half of this pie is the matter, right? Is the dark, is the form. is the density that we've been talking about. It's also the experience of this human experience in this lifetime. And the upper half of the pie being more the consciousness, more the etheric, the multidimensionality, the upper chakra work. But when we would also divide in masculine and feminine, we could say that the left side is feminine and the right side masculine, or the other way around. What would you say about the difference between masculine and feminine qualities within ourselves?
Yeah, well, as a principle, I was just talking about this in a podcast this morning. In a way, the masculine as a principle holds a quality of sovereignty. So the masculine is connected to purpose and alignment, and the feminine principle is synergy, so relationship and interconnection. So they're really two aspects of all of us, and like yin and yang. So in a way, the way they can work together inside of our systems is the masculine almost stands behind the feminine, holding alignment and a sense of purpose and focus and presence and connection to the verticality of our experience, so our connection to source. And then the feminine is that like interpersonal relational quality that expresses and feels and connects and weaves and brings the quality of love forward. So yeah, in a way, they're two components of every person. Yeah, that's kind of how I kind of understand them as a fundamental principle. It's sovereignty and synergy are the kind of the terms that I work with.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think for me also what I feel with the masculine has like in my own daily life, when I look at it like that, when my masculine is more active, I'm overall more in an energy that initiates, that is like very active, like moves forward with a certain focus, right? And when I'm more in my feminine, I feel more qualities of receptivity or magnetism. So, for example, when I'm in my business working, when I would do my marketing more from magnetizing, it would be more an energetic state that I'm in within myself. But where I go more into a masculine way of working, it's more like posting and showing myself and active. Like it's a different energy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's also reflected even in our bodies. The male body has a lingam, so that there's a natural penetration. Female bodies have wombs. So they're kind of the archetypes are playing out biologically as well. But I do think a lot of the work we're connected to is integrating that for all bodies. So each person finding both elements of expression.
And this is something that you're really deeply passionate about, right? Like to really work with these archetypes and work with the masculine and the feminine in all bodies. So definitely. This work is not connected, like the feminine is not only for women or female bodies. The feminine is for all bodies and all genders. And that's something I feel is beautiful also to talk
it's
about.
A real shame and a tragedy that feminine has become female and masculine male, the gender link, because they're well beyond that, and it limits people's connection to those archetypal energies. So I have a great passion for particularly feminine work to reach all bodies, form and gender.
Yes, beautiful. Yeah. So the dark feminine, what would you say has been the journey of this archetype so far? Because the dark feminine is work that we, over the last few years, we can see it a lot, right? The dark feminine is, I think, a quite familiar archetype. What is her story, or what is your story? Maybe even before that, like how did the dark feminine come into your life, into your awareness?
Well, from a very young age. So I feel like I first encountered, and I'll say the archetype was Lilith. So she kind of entered my world and around puberty. So I had a very, very profound experience of meeting her, and she kind of turned my life upside down. I went from a kind of quiet, shy girl to this sort of something just burst out of me, around puberty, where I felt, this force of life and a challenge to the oppression of my wild power and of my sexuality and my body and my femininity. And so she kind of entered my life very young, but I've had significant journeys with her where, just teaching through the body, really, where I felt a lot of my work has been base work. So, and that's from Lilith. That's from, the energy of that primal power of the serpent, of the dark feminine coming up from the base. So yeah, I've had lots of embodied teachings over the years from her, and she's been a deep ally that I've journeyed with. And only around 5 years ago, I had this experience of kind of having to let her go because I'd formed an identity around her, and I was sort of
Mm.
polarizing with the outer light masculine, which is patriarchy. I was sort of angry with the world and angry with white males, and so there was a point in time where I realized, oh, I'm tipping into some of the shadow of this archetype. I'm starting to feel the rage and the projection, the blame, and so
Mm.
I had a journey of kind of releasing her through my identity, and then now working with wanting to bring the archetype into love, because the
Mm.
story of Lilith was that she was an outcast from the Garden of Eden. So there is a deep longing for me to, weave in that archetype back into the kingdom of humanity. So she's not
Yeah.
this cast, she was cast out as a snake, and the snake is seen as a serpent, which is, the church band. And
Can you
so,
share a bit about that story about Lilith and how
yeah,
she was casted out? Because I think it's
yeah,
also a beautiful reflection of what happened to the dark feminine as an archetype within
yeah.
ourselves, right?
Yeah, well, there's many versions of it, but a version I love is that she connected with Adam. So, the first couple, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, started off with Adam and Lilith, entering a connection upon which she wanted equal sexual expression, and the way it's told is that she wanted to lie on top of him, but he wanted her to lie underneath. So there was almost like a sense of a domination over her energy, and she wanted equality in that expression. And the story is that Adam left her and married Eve, who was subservient to his energies. And Lilith was transformed into the serpent that then tempted Eve with the apple, into hell, really, which is this realm. That was heaven, and into where we live now, which is supposedly not in the Garden of Eden. So she was kind of typecast into this seductress, and her sexuality was branded as being shameful and not trustworthy. And so she was raging, she's angry. And I feel like when you talk about what's happening with the dark feminine now, I feel that energy that's come, and then the mythology that goes way back into the Genesis is coming forward now in a way of reclaiming power and
Mm.
beauty, and the carnal wisdom of what it is to be embodied and connected to our sexuality in the earth and our blood. And so in a way there's a starting to be she's starting to emerge, but she has wounding.
Yes.
She's got wounding from that experience. She's actually angry about what happened and doesn't feel
Mm.
loved or included in what's sacred. So
Yeah.
that's the kind of work that I think we'll touch on as well when we meet, is like, how do we acknowledge her wounds, but also bring her to love now? How can she
Yeah.
come back to love with Adam, with Eve, with the light
Mm.
expressions of humanity?
Yes, beautiful.
Mm.
Because it's also my experience. I think I had really deep work with the dark feminine when I was in the dark room for 12 days and nights in 2018. And there was also, as I was entering into this, in the work with this archetype, it started also with these layers of like wanting to break free. And it came together with a certain rage, and a certain like, and this type of energy that wanted to release because it had been like locked in my body for such a long time. So definitely we will be making space during our day in Amsterdam for freeing up those layers that have been suppressed or rejected within ourselves. But definitely also to have a look at what is the integration of the dark feminine? Like, who is the dark feminine when she can heal herself beyond that wounding, beyond that rejection that happened to her collectively? Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful framing. Who is she now? If she was loved, if she was included in the kingdom, if she was valued, if she knew love from the beginning, who is she now? What woman would she
Yeah.
be? What quality of energy or life would she be? I love that question. And I think that collectively we're on the journey of rewriting her narrative and her mythology. I do
Yes.
feel, and I think it starts with that very piece you shared, that sacred rage is the key, and the power of rage is one of the first ways to access her.
Yeah.
and freeing our own shackles of our own patriarchal energies. Because what I discovered was that outer light masculine, the patriarchal energies that I used to be angry at, were inside me as well. So
Mm.
in a way, going to like lifting, freeing ourselves from the voices that limit that energy in our own lives, that
Yeah.
quieten her voice in us. So I think it's an inside job
Yes.
ultimately first,
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
love that you named this layer of the sacred rage. I think some layers that I had within me were also layers that it's okay to look ugly or weird. Like I would like become a bit outrageous in a way. Like everything was welcome, all weird forms and expressions of myself. And then I had these really deep layers of my sexuality that could like be also very expressive or had really like a lot of different flavors and different sounds and different ways of being. So definitely during our day in Amsterdam, we'll also be exploring the movement and the sound and the different forms of expression that come online when we give space to her within ourselves. But I also feel specifically curious because I love this topic so much. I talk about it a lot when I teach about the strong, independent woman within ourselves, because I think that the previous generations, they have been standing up for being a woman, right? They have been standing up for their rights. They have been angry also at patriarchy. Like you're touching upon those layers within your journey also very much. And I feel that when we stay in that energy, if we would stay in that wounded part of the dark feminine, and we stay angry, that it creates a very toxic way of relating to ourselves and a very toxic way of relating with each other as well. Like you said, I was angry at white men. I'm angry at the system. I'm angry. And I feel that as long as we are fighting against, we cannot really change the things that we are angry towards. So I feel curious, what do you believe is needed for integrating this archetype within ourselves?
Mm. Yeah, I love that. I want to just add a piece to that. I feel that anger that's projected out, like initially that we need a projection in order to express it. Like sometimes you need like a child, like when my daughter was a toddler, she needed to kind of push against something for an emotional body to be able to see itself or to recognize itself. So
Mm.
the emergence of that energy sometimes is not pure yet. It does have a bit of projection in it, and it is a bit of fuck you energy, and that's kind of a healthy beginning of starting to find our power. But there becomes a
Yes.
point, as you named, where that then becomes an identity, that
Mm.
I am this person that has an issue with the other. So it creates a separation with some aspect on the outside, and then it holds an identity that locks that into place. So
Mm.
ultimately that means that we can stay at war with something forever, like
Yes.
we could be, and we create a form around that traps us in that. So we can't then access the other quadrants, the very pieces you're talking about, a light masculine, light feminine. They're not accessible because we're trapped in this archetype. And so I feel like the work I've had to do is firstly release my identity with the archetype. It was such a big, I mean, she's tattooed all over me. She's such a big part of my journey, but it's because I didn't want to be that part of her. I didn't want to
Mm.
hold that polarity and a sense of the other anymore. So yeah, I feel like it's been able to release that identity if we've held it, but also to, there's a process like with anyone who's traumatized or wounded, is like listening to her, and then it's like, yeah, inviting her into love, so I
Mm.
feel like, yeah, that I want to be in a deep honoring of her now, and kind of and putting my hands at it and inviting her into the kingdom, so there's a sense of how do we integrate her every day, like how do we invite her into our humanity, how do we include her in our daily life, how do we include her in
Mm.
our work or our approach to projects, or so how do we put our hands out collectively and invite that energy that's not overpowering, that's not saying fuck you all, and but actually, yeah, starting to integrate her into the kingdom of humanity. So that's kind of what I
Mm.
feel I'm slowly doing, rather than her
Yeah.
take up most of my space. I mean, I include her, and she comes online often still and draws through me, but she's part of the kingdom now, in my own kingdom with my other the other quadrants of my
Mm,
expression, do you know?
yeah. So what do you
Yeah.
feel are some of our qualities as she
Mm,
enters into the kingdom and into
mm.
integration and into love?
Beautiful qualities. To me, she's the voice of the earth itself. She speaks for everything, like pulsing with life. So she transmits that, and she transmits that through also energy. So the dark feminine is not often, when she comes through, she's not consciousness. That's light feminine, holds more of that. She's vibration. So I feel like she brings, when she's in a room, when I feel her in my body, I feel like she's bringing in all of life, the forests, the
Mm,
oceans. Like she vibrates life, so
mm,
that's such the vibrational powers is so under acknowledged. That's where she really holds power. So she vibrates life into a space. She's also she holds a clear gaze, and she's a truth speaker. So she penetrates too. Like I feel the dark feminine is more penetrative and the light feminine is probably more receptive, but she can become forward and she speaks truth. So she's a voice that we need in the planet that stands up for things, actually. I feel like it's the dark feminine that's ultimately, as an archetype, needs to rise up in us in relation to climate change or the interconnection of all the kingdoms of life. Like I feel she's that
mm,
voice that
mm,
rises up and speaks. And there was an image once I saw, a beautiful painting of what I saw as like the dark feminine, but she was in front of this army of men going to war, and she was like screaming. She'd taken her clothes off and she was wild and she was like chaos, and they were stopped still. And it was like, wow, that's the force of chaos and life that stands up for actually the voices that aren't spoken, that don't have voices, the animals
mm,
and the forests and our children. And so she's an advocate, she's an activist in that way. She
mm.
brings activism into form, amongst
Beautiful.
many other things. But
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. So I feel like a few things as I'm listening to you. Like I feel one quality that I feel very strongly in her is freedom. There is a certain freedom that she emanates naturally. And also I feel that what she helped me with a lot is unhiding. Because I was someone that would hide a lot, and I feel that when in my whole journey with the dark feminine, like parts of me could become visible. And in the beginning, yes, that was through really like being like, "Rah!" And like, very expressive. But I feel over time, more and more, it became a silent unhiding, where it's just me being me. So I feel that this day also that we're going to offer in Amsterdam is going to be really beautiful for the ones who want to explore this quality of unhiding yourself, to let yourself be visible in whatever way that looks like, to let yourself be visible, to explore those qualities of freedom within yourself, to explore the connection to your body, to explore the connection to your sound, your breath, your movement, your sensuality, your erotic nature. Yeah, what would you say
Mm.
are some of the
Yeah,
things
I
that
mean, I love
women
that.
can explore?
Yeah, I love that. I'll add a few things onto that. I think that she's absolutely permission giving and
Mm,
untamed, and she's life itself expressed. And so there's a liberation in that. The freedom ultimately is that we're liberated to express
mm,
the essence of what moves moment to moment. That's the true freedom, as in like we are life itself expressed. We are everything. And I love that she gives permission to that through, as you're saying, through the sound and the bodies and, vibration and an erotic life. And she does give permission to also enjoy our sexual nature. That was the whole,
mm,
Genesis story, was actually that's the deep medicine of Lilith and the dark feminine for me, was the embracing the deep pleasure of the body,
mm.
really being in pleasure and as a sacred act, and
Yes, it's
and
beautiful that you share
sexuality.
that. Yeah, but
Mm,
it's beautiful that you name this piece of sexuality as something very sacred, because we're going to offer this day in a big cathedral. right? And this cathedral, it's a very open cathedral, because I've been in that space a few times now with big groups of women, and it's a cathedral is very open to rewrite also the stories around what is acceptable in spaces like a church. And I feel that there is a very beautiful layer also as an offering to this church, where we can rewrite the story of what is normal and what is sacred and what is not sacred. I think in a culture, a Christian culture that the Netherlands mostly is, I feel that sexuality being sacred is still something relatively new, so to speak. Right. So I feel that this day brings a really beautiful weaving and remembrance into a space like a church, that our erotic nature is innocence. Like our erotic nature is beautiful. It's sacred. It's something to be celebrated. Yeah, that's one piece that I'm really excited about as well.
Yeah, and I think that it's the way that I feel like we're going to approach it too, is that it's not in the nature of fuck the church, but actually it's more as in honoring, because I do believe that part of the shadow of Lilith and the dark feminine is that she hasn't accepted the journey that patriarchy's led us to now. And, if we're looking at experience and life as being perfection unfolding, actually, that everything that happens, as much as it can be painful and traumatic and not what we wanted, leads us to liberation. So in a way, it's like acknowledging the layers of the church that were there, not trying to change that, but bringing the pieces that and reinstating the parts that were actually just missing, from that. So it's not like we weren't wanting to strip down what was there. It's more about like layering on the new narrative, and I think that's the rewrite of her, as in, can she accept what's happened? Can she accept that the pendulum swung from the feminine to the masculine expression for like a long time, and that she can she be with that? Can we accept that and not push against that, but move towards what we want now, what we want to bring into balance and love?
Yeah. So as you're sharing that, I can also feel that this day might have layers of sadness releasing around that, and layers of, or moments of, where forgiveness is going to enter into the space, so that we can find, so that we can find ourselves back in a place of love.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, I grew up as a Catholic in a Catholic school and went to Catholic churches, and I remember sitting there as a young girl and not seeing any reflections of me, not seeing any feminine form, or, male priests and altar boys. And I remember feeling like something's missing. Why isn't divinity also in this form? Why isn't God also in the form of the feminine body or the feminine expression? So in a way, there's like where that's what the rise of the feminine is really. It's reinstating the Godhead, the goddess head is also being feminine, and we're bringing those two parts together again. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Is there anything that I didn't ask you about around the dark feminine that you feel is something that you really, want to share about?
I think the only thing that I want to share is maybe speaking into those who might be attending, is that I feel that she is the doorway to our leadership as well, feminine leadership. I do feel that, that the penetrative quality that she holds, and the interconnection to all life, and the liberation, that she carries, and the expression of body and shamanic wisdom. It's like the quality of that is what's missing in the world deeply. And I feel that, there is for those coming, it's chance also to find that, like, how that energy can lead more in your life. Do you know? Like, and actually, and I feel like these events, and when we open these doors into archetypal realms, which is what it is, we're also, we're doing deep work of rewriting the myth that affects everyone, the collective story. So I feel the power of that, both of personal liberation and leadership, but also of collective healing. So I feel like that's what I'm most excited about when we gather, actually, is also the turning towards collectively shifting this story, somehow making steps towards that. And yeah. and
Beautiful.
how important her archetype is now. It's so needed in the world. Yeah.
I also noticed already a few times when you share about this deep connection to nature and earth and the shamanic like wisdom that is within our bodies. Did you see the second movie of Avatar?
Mm-hmm.
And this woman, I forgot her name, but she's the main character basically. And it turns out she has this amazing connection to Ewa, to nature, and to like the earth. And this is just some of those images that I'm seeing, because for me also the new way of leading is from this deep connection to the pulse of our intuition, but also this deep connection to the pulse of life itself. And I feel that dark feminine is the archetype that connects us to that deep pulse of life, right? And when we find the communion with that pulse of life, we will naturally be guided in each moment. So I feel our new way of leading is not so much us doing the leadership, but it's a new way of leading is that pulse of life doing the leadership through us. And that's something that's the reason why I get up every morning. It's the reason why I do what I'm doing, because I can see that when we can allow the pulse of life to lead through us, I feel that's where the deeper intelligence of life itself can bring everything back into harmony. And that's definitely also the energy that I feel for a day with the dark feminine in Amsterdam. Many, many beautiful layers in this event. And I can already feel like, wow, this could be a 7-day event.
Yeah,
Because there's so
totally.
much that we can work with and
Yeah.
so much that we can touch upon. But yeah, it's a one day that has a deep potential for deep transformation and beautiful rewriting of the stories within ourselves, within the archetype, and also the collective. Yeah.
And when we work directly with archetypal energies, we're impacting the collective because we're living inside of them and we live inside their story. So to turn towards the story, the narrative, and to actually be able to meet that narrative in ourselves, where do we fall into our own victimhood, and where are we polarized with something outside of us, or projecting, or, trapped in it, not being able to express our rage. When we do that work and when we turn towards the archetypal work, we're changing a lot of energies for the great, the whole itself. So even on a personal level, it's transpersonal work, it's deep work. So yeah, I value those who choose to come will be connected to that. And yeah.
Beautiful. So during this day, we are actually welcoming 111 women into the space, and we will link all the information below this episode. But it's the 23rd of July, 2023. It will be a full day of exploration with the dark feminine. We also have a special offer. If you bring a friend, we have a beautiful discounted price. And also we have possibilities for those who want to join, but if you cannot afford to join, we have also some beautiful scholarship possibilities for the ones who feel the call. Yeah. It's a magical place, the Posthoornkerk. It's a really beautiful, impressive almost cathedral, a space that I'm really looking forward to be in again. And I'm really looking forward to be in the space with you again, Winter. We've been working together in 2020 in the Temple of Death. And I'm really looking forward to be in the space together with you again in Amsterdam as well. Yeah. Anything to close about this day, the dark feminine?
I feel that for those who are, considering this, feeling she'll call you. So feeling there could be fear or uncertainty, but I feel like there'll be a calling. So to listen to that, like the womb calling of like, oh, this, yes, like that's the only thing is like, I feel like when we go into these this type of work, there's a calling. So listening for her to tap you on the shoulder and say, that's for you. This is to partake in, and the way to listen for that.
Yes.
Yeah. She's been such a guide in my life, and I just trust that calling into greater depths of the self through, that womb knowing.
Yes. Beautiful. Yeah. I thank you so much, Winter. Before we close, you're coming to Europe soon?
Yeah, I am.
Do you want to share a bit about the work that you're bringing to Europe?
I mean, I've got 2 offerings for my Magdalena work, which is where we met. I'm teaching in June in Israel. And then in Finland, Nicola Temple. I'm so excited to teach there. It's a beautiful temple in north of Helsinki as well in July, the 1st to the 7th of July. So that's female bodies. We explore a bit of the dark feminine in that, but it's a deep journey into the Magdalene mysteries and the feminine mysteries for a week. So yeah, so they're my two kind of personal events.
Beautiful. Yeah. All right. So anyone who feels the pull, we warmly invite you into a day with the dark feminine, 23rd of July, 2023. And we would love to see you there on that day. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us, and hope to see you then.
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you. Did you receive any inspiration, motivation, or powerful breakthroughs by listening to this episode? Then please share this episode by taking a screenshot and tagging me in your stories at nicole.nima.costeres. I would love to celebrate you, share you in my stories, and it would mean so much to have my work reach more powerful, passionate women like you. Thank you so much, and looking forward to see you next week.